Welcome to Grow Getters with host Davis Michaelsen, who's looking for and discovering agriculture's most inventive side hustles. We'll meet resourceful and innovative entrepreneurs who share how they make extra money moonlighting to keep their farms and families going strong. From starting new businesses to tapping into new technologies, these Grow Getters are redefining what it means to be a farmer.
Hey everybody, my name is Davis. Welcome to Grow Getters, where we're talking to farmers and farm people who've got a little something going on the side. Now, before we get too far, let me ask you to please like and subscribe so you won't miss any episodes of Grow Getters. There's some fascinating stories, and today's tale is one of them. Certainly, there's a lot to talk about with our guest today. Before we get too far, I want to read just a little bit from their website, Whiskey Acres Distillery. Benny's Beverage Depot describes their bottled-in bond bourbon as, quote, vanilla, drizzled caramel corn that greets the nose with a background of cinnamon and nutty oak. A thick and coating palate highlights the sweet caramel corn and moves toward ripe apples and lightly toasted coconut. The finish is long and soft with sweet red berries fading into a peppery spice. A new standard for craft bourbon, it's been said. Today we're talking with a farmer who, in cahoots with his dad and a few others, are turning corn from the heart of corn country into sweet, sweet, delicious whiskey. Let me bring him in. We've got from Whiskey Acres Distillery, Jamie Walter, welcome to Grow Getters. How are you today?
I'm great, Davis. Thanks for having me on the show today.
Absolutely. Okay. Before we get too far, I do always like to establish a little bit of what I call farm cred with my guests. We know that you've got a sort of a side operation going on there, which we can talk about which one is the side operation later on. But tell us about your conventional farming activities. Talk to us about your dirt, brother.
Yeah, we're located about 60 miles due west of Chicago in DeKalb, Illinois. We like to call it the birthplace of hybrid seed corn. A lot of your listeners are probably familiar with the DeKalb seed corn brand, of course, which was started here. My grandfather started this farming operation in the late 1930s. He farmed with several of his children, including my father. And then I came back to the family farm about 25 years ago after a brief career as a practicing attorney. Bought an uncle out that was retiring and joined my dad. Together, we farmed at its peak about 2,500 acres of corn, soybeans, and a few specialty crops. As time has gone on, we've beginning to focus on a few other things, as we're going to talk about. And so currently the farm's running around a little under 2,000 acres. And we still raise commodity corn as well as soybeans, wheat, rye, and barley, and a number of specialty corns too.
Well, yes, absolutely. And we'll talk about that because there's I don't know how you handle the anxiety of that 5-year wait to find out if it turned out or not, but we'll get there. I'm curious. So you were a practicing attorney, Jamie.
Correct. Yeah.
And this is a theme that sort of runs through some of these discussions with people like you. What is it that was so compelling that said, you know what, I've got this whole career thing. This is pretty cool, but nah, I'm going back to the farm. What was that thought process like?
Well, it was probably a combination of really two things. One, I wasn't really enjoying the practice. I mean, I was, you talk to some other attorneys, that's not always an uncommon theme that you'll hear. And my wife and I were getting ready to start a family, and we were looking for ways to, to be able to get back to the family farm and do that. So that was a big part of it. The other thing is, if I'm being completely honest, I'm a bit of a serial entrepreneur. I started and sold my first company by the time I was 20 years old, a little, crop consulting business. And then over time, as we were farming here, we got involved in seed production, seed sales, multi-brand seed sales. I started a crop insurance agency. We did a number of things along the way, and that kind of eventually culminated in the distillery.
Because what you found was some of these corn hybrids aren't necessarily the best for the distilling process. As I understand it, you've reached out for some natural varietals, some naturally occurring variety. What would you call that? Help me.
Yeah, so the best way to describe it for listeners that probably are more familiar with is to compare it to wine, right? You've got different varietals of grapes, that we all accept make different flavors of wine, right? A Cabernet Sauvignon, a Pinot Noir, both red grapes, they make different flavors of wine. And what we were uh, kind of our hypothesis was, and that's another little side business I had back in the day was making wine out in California with friends. And so with that experience and knowing what we knew about corn genetics, we suspected that some corn varieties would affect flavor more or less than others. So we had some theories on that. We started with commercial corn varieties that we started identifying, and we found a half dozen or so that we really liked, and we continue to use some of those, or at least the families or the offspring of some of those varieties, even today, and some of our offerings. But we also found a rich palette of flavor in heirloom and specialty corn. And so
That's the word I
today,
was looking for.
we
Heirloom, yes, sir.
yeah, we use more and more and raise some of those corns, and even we've now even created our first hybrid cross here, and are in the process of getting intellectual property rights on that, and use that for one of our lines of corn.
Well, Jamie, we're getting dangerously close to talking about the product itself. Before we do, I thought that I would paint a picture for us. Imagine, if you will, that Willie Nelson has tried your delicious whiskeys, bourbons, rye, even vodka, loves them so much that Willie Nelson decided to write a jingle for you all. I believe it would probably go something like this. Well, I've got acres and acres and acres and acres of whiskey. It ain't all bourbon, but it helps. You can't calm me down. And with my acres of whiskey, I'm gonna make my mark. 'Cause I've got acres and acres across till I get home. Now, Jamie, there at Whiskey Acres, thank you very much. Whiskey Acres Distillery, you're just outside of DeKalb, Illinois, the Chicago area, we would say. As we're getting into the product, I feel like we need to talk about some land use issues first that came up that I feel like maybe put the pedal to the metal, added a new imperative to your idea. Urban sprawl and leased
Right.
acres. How did those two work together?
Yeah, that's very much the case. So when in the kind of the heyday of the real estate boom, if you remember, 2000, early 2000s, um, we were seeing lots of the land that we farm and that we rented get developed for residential real estate, and now increasingly, everything from warehouses to industry. And we weren't landowners. We leased almost all of the ground that we farmed. Some of it was from family members, but that was a vulnerability that we had. I did kind of a business school 101 SWOT analysis of what we had going here, and we decided as part of that process that we needed to have more security in our land, and we needed to be able to do more with fewer acres. We needed to extract more value per acre as the city continued to grow closer and closer to us, rather than seeing urban sprawl as a threat. Perhaps that's an opportunity for us to create direct to consumer relationships and move product and take advantage of this big population center that's real literally on our doorstep.
Yeah. And I see perhaps another way that you're taking advantage of that proximity is the structure that you're coming to us from right now. That looks like quite the space you got there.
Yeah, this is our visitor center that we built in 2000, and just the start of 2019 is when it opened. My wife actually designed it. She's an architect by trade. It's a beautiful building. It's a timber frame, old mortise and tenon like they built old barns back in the day. And it is our consumer facing side of the business. So we're open on the weekends, every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. The public can come here, and we receive on average about 2,000 visitors a month. Mostly from the Chicagoland area, but surprisingly, I'd say a half a dozen states and a couple foreign countries every weekend. So
Huh.
it enables us to sell the product and give tours, but also engage customers about agriculture. And that's a big part of what we do too, is education.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, to call your product top shelf hooch, I think misses the mark by a long way. A quote, because it's you, your father, and two other rascals working on this here. Rob, your distiller, says that one of your brews is like eating a macaroon in a cornfield. That's of the 7-year bourbon whiskey. Are you guys hanging out in the cornfield eating macaroons during the day? Is that how he knows that, or?
Yeah, there's a lot of fluff when you get to describing flavors, and that's always a challenging thing to do. But there really are notes, and that's the way we describe both smells and
Mhm.
tastes. We have to relate them to something else that people are familiar with, and so that's the best way to do that. Uh, yeah, it's pretty exciting. You talked about that Benny's comment at the beginning. That
Yeah.
product, our bottled and bond bourbon, is actually a double gold medal winner at the San Francisco World Spirits Competition. So among thousands of entries from the big boys like Maker's Mark, Jim Beam, and Heaven Hill, we were able to beat out many of those brands to really get top honors at that tasting competition. So it's one of the things that put us on the map, and it's not our only double gold medal. We have a number of them.
Yes, absolutely. The list of accolades is long, and it appears well deserved. You really put an awful lot into your product. But when we talk about those varietals, the heritage. See, now I can't heirloom. I knew it started with an H. I can't
There
think
you
of
go.
that word today. Heirloom varieties. Those are going into some directly into some very specific distilled spirits, aren't they?
Yes. So the first one we started with was our blue popcorn. That's probably what we're most well known for within that space. Our blue popcorn bourbon. It's made from 75% blue popcorn and 15% soft red winter wheat and 10% malted barley. It's fantastic. It's another double gold, platinum winner, depending on the competition that it's been in. We're well known for it, but it sells out super fast. I mean, as you mentioned earlier, Davis, it takes 5 years to go from field to bottle. And so while we're ramping up production as fast as we can, we have to age that whiskey until it's mature. And so we can't just flip a switch and make more widgets overnight. So there will be more and more coming. Our next release of that product will be in December, and we expect it to sell out very, very quickly within hours or days. We also make a Bloody Butcher, a bourbon, a bourbon out of green Oaxacan corn that originated from Oaxaca, Mexico. Originally, we grow it here. Something called Glass Gem, which is kind of a multicolored, almost like a Native American corn. Just a lot of very interesting flavor profiles. And now, like I said, we're probably most proud of the one that we've bred ourselves, combining an old corn from Minnesota that was used for whiskey and prohibition with a corn that we found in Tuscany, Italy, that was used for polenta. And we've crossed the two. It's got great distilling characteristics and great flavor. And it's still going to be a few years before it's ready, but we're so excited about that one that almost 50% of our production is in that today.
That's in the barrel now,
Correct.
so it's just a waiting game.
Yeah, it's just a waiting game.
Yeah. But you're also making vodka. Now, I'm not an expert at creating. I'm an expert at making it disappear. I always thought vodka was made out of potatoes.
No, vodka can be made out of anything fermentable. In fact, I've got a library here at the distillery that has vodka made out of, it's potatoes, sweet potatoes, corn. Actually, most of the corn drank in the United States today is actually made out of corn, or most of the vodka is made out of corn. So it comes out of fuel ethanol plants. Typically, that would be
Okay.
surprising to a lot of your listeners, but 80% of the U.S. vodka comes out of fuel ethanol plants, is bought by brands that don't even have distilling equipment, but it's before any of the unleaded fuel has been added to it, right? It's grain neutral alcohol above 190 proof, so it meets the definition that is needed for vodka. And then they just add water to it to water it back down. It's really cheap. That's why there's so many cheap flavored vodkas on the market, because they don't taste very good unless you add some flavoring stuff to them.
Ah,
Um,
yeah.
Ours is made from 100% corn, in a whiskey still, so it actually has some character to it. There's a little bit of interesting butterscotch notes. It's got a little bit of a creamy viscosity to it. But if I'm being completely honest, Davis, vodka is a small piece of our business here, only about 5%
Mm,
of what we do. So
okay.
we really focus on whiskey here.
How many varieties total have you got? Because you've got bourbon, you've got different ages. I see you've got a rye here in front of me.
Yeah, counting all the specialty stuff, we have about 8 that are currently released into the wild at some point during the year, with again several more that haven't yet been released yet because they're not mature.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, with that, let's get to let's have one more musical selection, an ode, if you like, to Whiskey Acres. It goes a little something like this. Whiskey Acres, let's pour a few. The Midwest Napa Valley makes a spirited brew. Whiskey Acres, it's a kaleidoscope of corn, some barley, some wheat, top shelf bourbon, vodka and rye. Enjoy with baseball and a coconut pie. Whiskey Acres on the Grow Getter Show. All right, we're with Whiskey
Wow.
Acres Distilling Company here on Grow Getters with you. We've talked about the product, dude. It sounds delicious. You've got the descriptions there. I have got to try this. Talk to me about logistics, distribution, all that sort of stuff. What, how do you untangle all that?
Yeah, the easy part is making it, if I'm being completely honest. I think
Yeah.
every distiller that goes through this process like we have finds that distribution and market access is the tough one. Alcohol distribution is regulated individually by each state across the country. Generally speaking, it's a three-legged or a three-tiered system. So we have to sell, the manufacturer has to sell to a wholesaler, and then that wholesaler sells to the retail location or the restaurant or bar, et cetera. So that makes it a little tricky. It's protected by law, and it's a difficult part of the business, if I'm being honest. But we're currently distributed in 4 states: Illinois, Nebraska, California, test markets in California, and Indiana, and roughly 1,000 locations between those 4 states.
Now I see you've got whiskeyacres.com, gang, is where to have a look here. Whiskeyacres.com. Or I'm in Missouri. Would I be able to pop up on whiskeyacres.com, pick out what sounds absolutely delicious and have it shipped here?
Yeah, so because of that three-tiered system, it's a little more complicated than that, unfortunately.
Yeah.
We are prohibited legally from selling you a bottle directly and shipping it to you. It's just not something that we can do.
Okay.
However, we've developed a bit of a workaround. We have a distributor and bottle fulfillment center in Washington, D.C. called Sealbox, Seelbachs, sealbox.com. And you can get that information on our website. We have a link there, and you can buy bottles there and then have them shipped to not every state in the union, but roughly 30, 35 states in the union from sealbox.com.
All right. Well, I'm hoping maybe Zach Zingula can put a link to that down in the description there. Now, Jamie, I'm very impressed by your operation, by the way that you've got your head around this whole thing. I would like for you to talk to that practicing attorney, that veterinary assistant, that dentist, that guy laying bricks, whoever that person might be that's just can't shake the entrepreneurial. There must be something more for me. I'm unhappy in my life. I've got to do a scary leap now. Talk to that person, please.
Um, I'd say first of all, don't be afraid to follow your passion and your dreams. At the same time, don't go into it willy nilly. I mean, we spent a lot of time. We spent the better part of a year putting together a business plan, researching the market, getting consultants to help us put together our equipment and our training programs and everything here. And then we made sure that we were well capitalized to get started. And all those things are very important to starting a business that's going to grow and succeed. You have to have all the pieces to the puzzle. A lot of people go into things, especially in the craft brewing and distilling world, they've got a passion, right? They're artists. They really want to do something neat and unusual, but they don't necessarily have all their ducks in the row as to how they're going to get there. And so spend the time to put together a plan, I think, is a key item.
Well, and I would imagine, because I'm sort of a creative thinker type myself, organization really isn't my strong suit. Maybe what I'm hearing from you is, hey, if you've got an idea, maybe it's time to talk to somebody. If you're the creative type, let's find a nerd to talk to and crunch the numbers for us and help us put this together. Someone who thinks that way. Is that fair?
Yeah, absolutely. And very much, I know sometimes there's that yin and yang. Farmers tend to be pretty independent people to begin with,
Yep.
and they hate to spend money on research and because you might decide that you don't want to do it. And at the very least, I'd say go out and get a mentor, talk to maybe other people within that sector that have done this before you, and get some of their advice, pick their brains. We were very fortunate to have other craft distillers willingly share their thoughts with us before we got started. And when we offered to pay them, they were just like, no, we're not going to accept anything. Somebody did this for us and we're paying it forward. And we just ask you to do the same thing. And we have.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. That's really great. Well, you've been very generous with your time. It's a fascinating story. Lots more that we could talk about here. Our viewers, what would you like for their takeaway to be today from this conversation, Jamie?
Well, I think, a few things. One is that we really stand by the motto that great whiskey isn't made, it's grown. We think it starts in the fields, with the best ingredients, the best crops that we can grow. And then we really spend a great deal of effort researching and then crafting something that the market really, really enjoys. And that's an important thing for us to share because it's what makes us different. There's very few distilleries out there that grow their own crops, and there's frankly very few of them that even distill their own stuff. They're just brands. And so get to know your products, ask questions, and learn about your farmers and where your food and drinks come from.
Excellent. Jamie Walter out in Illinois, whiskeyacres.com. That's whiskeyacres.com. Thanks so much for spending some time with us today, Jamie.
Thank you, Davis. You guys have a great day, and we hope to see you out here at Whiskey Acres some weekend.
Absolutely. Well, production support is provided by Jack Heffron and Zach Zingula. Find Grow Getters on Farm Journal's YouTube channel and listen to it wherever you find your favorite podcasts. So for Farm Journal Studios, I'm your pal, Davis Michaelsen for Grow Getters. Thanks for watching, and hey, everybody, let's get out there and grow get 'em.
Grow Getters is a production of Farm Journal Studios, where no one grows alone.